Night falls, and the world grows quiet. Between ancient walls, through northern mist, beside a fading fire, unseen hands still move. They shape clay, mix bread, heal wounds, and carry the weight of centuries without a sound. No statues, no songs, no names, only motion, steady and human. This is their story, the story of those who built, healed, endured, and disappeared into silence. The quiet hands of history. History is often told in the voices of kings, soldiers, and empires, in the thunder of battles and the glitter of crowns. But beneath those loud chapters lies another rhythm, slower and deeper, the rhythm of the unnamed. They lived in the shadows of power, in narrow streets, wooden huts, and quiet workshops. Their names were never carved in stone, yet they kept the world alive, one task, one breath at a time. Their hands kneaded dough before dawn while cities still slept. They ground herbs into medicine as snow pressed against their windows. They stitched wounds, carried water, mended cloth, and whispered songs to children who would outlive them. Each gesture was a kind of prayer, patient, unrecorded, essential. In their silence, humanity found its endurance. This journey follows those forgotten makers of history through the quiet rooms of Rome, where women labored unseen behind stone walls. Across the northern lands, where healers turned roots into survival. To France, where a young girl named Jeanne became a flame against the dark. And into the medieval bakery, where bread, humble and sacred, rose like a daily miracle. As centuries pass and empires fall, these stories remain, soft as dust, strong as breath. For history is not only written by those who rule, but also by those who rise before dawn, who work with care and never ask to be remembered. When night comes again, their hands still move, quiet, steady, eternal. The quiet rooms of Rome. The narrow streets. Night drapes over the old city like a patient veil. The air is thick with the breath of summer, warm still, carrying the faint scent of olives, smoke, and wine. Stone walls, cracked and worn, exhale the day's trapped heat. Their surfaces glow softly in the lamplight, each one a record of passing centuries, each stone holding the memory of countless footsteps. Down below, the streets are narrow, veins of darkness winding through Rome's ancient heart. Windows hang like suspended stars, some shuttered, some open just enough for a whisper of life to spill out. A door creaks. A thin thread of light escapes, falls across the cobbles, and disappears. The rhythm of sandals fades down the alley. Slow, unhurried, the final heartbeat of the marketplace giving way to rest. Inside those small rooms, women sit in silence. The air smells faintly of oil and dust. A clay bowl rests beside a flickering lamp, its flame bending each time a draught passes through the cracks in the wall. Their rooms are little more than shadows contained by stone, spaces of necessity, not comfort. Yet, within these walls, entire worlds exist. They work with quiet precision, hands weaving, mending, grinding herbs, counting coins, setting aside what little remains from the day. A fragment of bread, a cup of watered wine, a folded cloth for the morning. Outside, the The city sleeps beneath the sound of distant hooves and laughter spilling from taverns, but here the only noise is the murmur of breathing, the soft click of pottery against wood. These are the unseen rooms of Rome, places where the empire's pulse beats faintly, where life continues not with conquest but with endurance. The empire depends on them, though it never speaks their names. In public, their presence is background, shadows at the edge of marble halls, silent figures crossing the forum at dawn. But, in truth, they hold the city together in ways no soldier or senator ever could. One woman rises to pour oil into a small lamp. The flame steadies. She glances toward the door, listening for footsteps, for the sound of someone returning or perhaps leaving forever. The light trembles across her face, tracing a line of exhaustion beneath her eyes. She is young, though the city has aged her faster than the years allow. Her hands are calloused, not from war, but from work, from the endless rhythm of survival. Across the alley, another lamp burns behind a curtain of linen. Inside, two women whisper, their voices low but firm, a conversation about debt, about prices, about hope. One laughs softly, a sound too rare, too human for such a late hour. The other reaches for her hand, not as comfort, but as solidarity. For a brief moment, their silence is shared, not heavy. They know tomorrow will begin again before dawn, the washing, the waiting, the endless turning of the wheel. Outside, the night deepens. The city breathes like a sleeping giant. Markets that roared with noise hours ago now rest beneath a blanket of dust and discarded petals. The smell of fish lingers near the portico, mixed with crushed figs and fading incense. Somewhere, a dog barks, a reminder that even in sleep, Rome never truly stops. Above, the sky is a black ocean scattered with stars. A faint wind slides between the alleys, carrying with it the distant toll of a bell from the Aventine Hill. It marks the hour, but here time feels different. Slower, heavier, suspended in oil and shadow. These women measure life not in days, but in tasks completed, in coins saved, in candles burned, to the end. There is no audience for their labor, no chorus to praise the constancy of their hands. They are the city's invisible rhythm, cleaning, feeding, mending, bearing. Their silence is not emptiness, but resilience, a quiet that fills the spaces where history forgets to look. In one corner, a child stirs, half awake. A lullaby hums from a mother's lips, old as the stones themselves. It has no melody to remember, no words to translate, just breath and tone, the universal sound of care. When the child drifts back to sleep, the mother sits again, staring into the lamplight as though searching for something inside it, perhaps a memory, perhaps the shape of a future she cannot name. The city beyond the wall moves faintly. A cart's wheel squeaks, a drunk laughs, a door slams. The noise washes over her and fades. What remains is the steady crackle of the lamp and the slow rhythm of her pulse. This is Rome at rest. Not the Rome of marble and triumph, but the Rome of sweat, patience, and quiet survival. Tomorrow these streets will fill again with merchants and priests, with shouts, with smoke, with the relentless march of business and prayer. And the women will rise before them all, unseen, setting the city's breath in motion. They will walk to the fountains, draw water from the mouths of carved gods, wash away the night's dust, and begin again. Faces calm, gestures practiced, hearts steady. Their silence will follow them, not as burden, but as armor. For in silence there is a kind of freedom, the freedom of those who expect nothing from the world, yet give it everything. The narrow streets hold their secrets like veins of gold beneath the stone, and though the empire will rise, fracture and fall, the memory of these rooms will linger in the air like heat after sunset. Listen closely. The sound you hear is not absence, but endurance. The faint echo of sandals, the rustle of cloth, the exhale of a tired breath that keeps the city alive. The narrow streets of Rome may sleep, but the quiet hands within them never truly rest. Quiet trade. Morning comes slowly to the old city. It does not break suddenly. It seeps like water through stone. First, a dim grey along the rooftops. Then, the faintest shimmer on the marble columns, the rooftops warming from black to gold. Birds begin their restless cries over the forum. Somewhere far away, a rooster calls, though few are awake to hear it. In the narrow alleys, the air smells of ash and bread. A baker opens his shutters. Steam drifts into the dawn. The streets that only hours ago belonged to the night now begin their slow transformation. From silence to sound, from shadow to labor, and among the first to rise, the women who walk to the fountains. The fountains are alive with murmurs. The marble basins carved with the faces of forgotten gods overflow with cold, clear water brought from distant hills. The women gather there before the sun has fully climbed the sky. They wash their faces, their arms, their hair. Some speak softly, their voices mingling with the splash of water. Others remain silent, lost in thought, their reflections trembling on the surface. They paint their lips, smooth their hair, and wrap bright togas around their shoulders. Cloth that catches the morning light like flame, crimson, saffron, deep blue. The colors are both armor and advertisement, signals to those who will pass them later in the day. A glance, a smile, a gesture, that is their currency. They move with practiced grace, each movement measured, each expression rehearsed, as if the entire city were a stage and they its most fragile performers. Rome wakes around them, merchants shout from stalls. Slaves haul amphorae through the streets. The smell of bread mixes with the sting of olive oil and the sweet smoke of incense. A beggar coughs beneath an archway. A senator's carriage rolls by, wheels grinding against stone. The women step aside, heads bowed slightly, but their eyes are steady. They have learned the delicate balance between visibility and invisibility. They walk through the heart of the empire, through markets and temples, through laughter and dust, past taverns where men lean half-drunk even before noon, past bathhouses echoing with splashing water and murmured deals. Everywhere there is motion, exchange, hunger, for food, for pleasure, for power. The empire feeds on desire, and these women know its rhythm better than most. Coins trade hands, a flash of bronze in sunlight, a faint clink that echoes louder than any voice. They have learned how to weigh a man's promise against the sound of his payment, how to smile without surrender, how to vanish before the city begins to judge. To live here, in this quiet trade, is to know both power and fragility. Their laughter hides fatigue, their grace conceals necessity. Sometimes they pause by the fountain again at midday. The sun burns the stone too hot to touch. They share figs, bread, a sip of watered wine, sitting in the shade of a crumbling wall. For a moment, they are not symbols or servants or shadows, just women, tired and alive. They talk of small things, a customer's clumsy joke, a lost earring, the rumor of rain. Then silence settles again like dust, and one by one they rise and return to their work. In the afternoon heat, the city trembles with sound. The cries of vendors, the clang of blacksmiths, the chants of priests all merge into one endless hum. The women move through it quietly, ghosts among the living. They know which corners offer shade, which doors open with kindness, which ones hide cruelty behind polite smiles. Every street has a memory. Every face has a story. They have learned to read both with precision. By late afternoon, the light softens. The market's thin. The smell of fish and sweat gives way to the sweetness of baked fruit, to the earthy scent of wine poured into clay cups. Men grow gentler as the day cools. They speak more, boast less. Some linger longer than they should. The women listen, nod, laugh. Their laughter a kind of shield, a sound that keeps the night from coming too soon. Each gesture they make has been practiced 1,000 times. The tilt of a head, the slow trace of a finger on a cup's rim, the pause before a smile. Every motion is artifice and truth at once, not deception, but survival shaped into elegance. For in Rome, beauty is both a blessing and a burden, and silence is often the safest language of all. When evening finally begins to cool the streets, they walk home the same way they came, through the narrow alleys, through shadows deepening against the walls. The sounds of the city change once more, the roar of the day giving way to the hush of lamps being lit. The fountains glimmer again, catching the last of the light. A few coins weigh heavy in their palms, enough for bread, maybe oil, perhaps a piece of fruit to share. Back in their small rooms, the lamps are lit one by one. Oil flickers against the stone. The colors of their garments, so bright beneath the sun, now turn muted. Scarlet becomes rust, gold becomes brown, blue sinks into shadow. They remove the paint from their faces with slow, careful motions. What remains is not glamour, not sorrow, but simple fatigue. They sit again in silence. The same silence as before, as always. The silence that fills the spaces between days. Outside, the footsteps fade. The city hums beyond their walls, but within these rooms, there is stillness. A stillness that feels ancient, endless. Some women pray before sleeping. Not to the marble gods of temples, but to smaller spirits. To the ones who might understand hunger or loneliness or the wish to endure. Their prayers are not spoken aloud, they rise instead from breath, from thought, from the quiet rhythm of their hearts. Others simply stare at the flame, watching it tremble, watching it bend and straighten again. They think of the day just lived, the faces met, the coins exchanged, the moments that might one day blur into nothing. They wonder if history will remember them. But history never looks this way. Outside, the city exhales. A final wind through the streets, carrying laughter from a tavern, the cry of a child, the creak of a gate. Above, the stars appear one by one, patient and indifferent. Rome continues its endless performance, and these women, its quiet actors, withdraw once more behind their curtains of light and shadow. The dim rooms fill with silence again, and again, and again. It is not an empty silence, but a living one. the silence of those who know how to survive unseen, whose stories flow beneath the surface like the water in the aqueducts, quiet, constant, carrying the weight of the empire on their unacknowledged shoulders. And so the day ends as it began, not with triumph or tragedy, but with endurance. A soft closing of doors, a final whisper of sandals across stone, and then nothing but the still, steady pulse of a city built on countless silent trades, each one small, each one necessary, each one vanishing into the dusk. The fading light. Time moves like dust. It drifts unseen, settling on walls, on hair, on the corners of clay bowls and the folds of forgotten cloth. At first it is soft, almost tender, but with each passing year it thickens, layers itself, turns the living world into memory. The empire grows, magnificent and fragile, like gold leaf pressed against stone. It glitters in sunlight, proud and unyielding, until the cracks begin to show. New buildings rise over old ones. Temples become markets, markets turn to ruins, and still the same wind moves through the narrow streets. The sound of sandals becomes the sound of boots. The language changes, but the rhythm of the city remains the same, eternal, patient, indifferent. Rome stretches outward, swallowing provinces and peoples, gathering riches like a god that can never be satisfied. But inside, in those quiet rooms that no one maps or records, life continues at its ordinary, sacred pace. The women still light their lamps. They still grind herbs, mend torn cloth, wash faces in cool fountain water. Their children grow, leave, return, or vanish into the city's crowd. Some of them age slowly, their hair turning to silver threads beneath the same ceiling beams that once watched their youth. Others disappear. A sickness, a debt, a night that ends without dawn. Rome is full of such vanishings. It swallows names as easily as it swallows time. The walls of those rooms remember. Carved into the plaster are initials, small drawings, fragments of prayer. A heart, a line from a forgotten poem, a mark made to count the days. These scratches are the truest form of history, not written in ink for emperors, but cut by hand for no one to see. They are not confessions or boasts, only proof that someone once existed in this space, that breath once filled this air. Outside, the empire trembles beneath its own weight. Armies march endlessly east and west. The Senate debates shadows. Granaries empty, then fill again, then empty once more. But inside the small rooms, the rhythm holds. Bread rising in ovens, water boiling on coals, a voice singing softly to itself. The great machines of conquest depend, without knowing it, on these quiet gestures. Years pass. Decades. The city's face changes. Fires sweep through, floods wash, streets clean, marble statues lose their noses, their arms. What was new becomes ancient. What was sacred becomes common. Yet the same fragrance of olive oil lingers in the stairways, the same dust gathers on window ledges. If you walk these alleys at twilight, you can still feel the warmth of all those lives pressed into the walls. Time does not erase, it transforms. The laughter that once filled these rooms becomes an echo in the stone. The footsteps become vibrations that never truly fade. Even the silence, the endless, unjudged silence of the women, becomes part of the city's heartbeat. They are gone, but their rhythm remains. One can imagine a woman sitting alone near a dying lamp, Her hands rest on her knees, her thoughts somewhere between memory and dream. Outside, the city murmurs like a faraway sea. Muffled voices, a wheel turning, a dog barking at nothing. She feels neither young nor old, only continuous, as though her life were not a story, but a circle endlessly returning to the same point. She knows little of emperors or wars. Her world is this single flame, this bowl of bread, this breath she exhales into the cooling air. And perhaps, centuries later, someone will find her mark. A few letters cut into stone, or a small clay lamp buried beneath rubble, and wonder who she was. They will give her a name she never knew. Call her anonymous, nameless, forgotten. But she is not forgotten. She lives in the motion of hands that still knead dough, in the voices that still rise at dawn to fetch water, in every act of endurance that keeps the fragile structure of civilization from collapse. The empire grows, then cracks, then grows again. Power shifts, names change, gods are replaced by other gods. But the pulse of survival never stops. It moves quietly, like a tide beneath marble, carrying everything forward, even the smallest gesture, even the faintest breath. When the candles go out, the room does not fall to darkness, it falls to memory. The glow that once lit the faces of the living remains, invisible but present, folded into the air. Each extinguished flame adds a layer to the city's light, a hidden brightness that belongs to the forgotten. There is no tragedy here, only continuation. The women who once sat in silence now become the silence itself. The stillness that settles over Rome at dusk, the hush between footsteps on stone, the pause in prayer before the first word is spoken. Some survive to old age. They sit at doorways, watching children run where they once walked, their faces lined but calm, their eyes carrying a kind of peace that only those who have endured truly understand. Others vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a faint warmth in the place where they once stood. And still the city moves, not noticing, yet somehow sustained by what it has lost. If you listen closely beneath the roar of time, you can still hear them. Not voices, but present. A breath in the dust, a hand on a wall, the faint scrape of pottery in another life. They have become part of the architecture, part of the eternal hum that rises when day turns to night. The empire may crumble, the marble may fall, but their memory stays, quiet, unjudged, and endlessly human. It does not ask to be praised or even remembered. It simply exists, folded into the rhythm of the world. Like dust in sunlight, it glows for a moment, then settles, only to rise again when the next breath disturbs it. And so, as twilight descends upon Rome once more, the fading light touches every wall, every name, every silent room that still holds the warmth of vanished hands. The glow softens, deepens, and finally surrenders to darkness. Not an end, but a resting place. For the true heart of the city has never been its emperors or its monuments, but the quiet endurance of those who lived unseen, whose patience outlasted glory, whose silence became the foundation of time itself. The candles go out. The city sleeps, and the memory stays. Steady as breath, unjudged as stone, eternal as the heartbeat of Rome. The healing hands of the north. Mist and firelight. Far to the north, where the land meets the restless sea, morning rises not with brightness, but with breath, a pale exhalation of mist drifting across the water. The horizon blurs, the world seems half dreamed, half awake. The air carries the taste of salt and pine, the faint metallic scent of cold. Wooden homes cling to the edge of the shore, their walls darkened by centuries of smoke and rain. Roofs sag under the weight of moss, and wind sighs through the gaps between boards. Yet inside there is warmth, a steady pulse of firelight that turns the small rooms gold. In one of these rooms, a woman works. She is a healer, not a priestess, not a scholar, but one who knows the language of roots and rain. Her hands move slowly without hesitation. Each gesture is a conversation with the earth. Before her lies a wooden table, scarred and stained from years of use. On it, bundles of dried herbs, a mortar carved from river stone, a small knife whose handle has been smoothed by touch. She grinds yarrow for wounds, its scent sharp and green. She mixes birch sap for strength, a drop at a time. Around her, the air shimmers with smoke and steam, the mingled breath of plants releasing their hidden spirits into the room. Outside, the sea moves like sleep. Its rhythm is ancient, an endless inhaling and exhaling that matches the sound of her grinding, her quiet hum. Gulls cry faintly through the fog, and the waves answer with low thunder. The boundary between land and water seems to dissolve, just as the boundary between healing and magic does here. The healer does not think of her work as sacred, it is simply life. A fisherman's cut hand, a child's fever, an old woman's aching bones. She knows the remedies for them all. Her shelves hold jars of angelica and juniper, meadowsweet and willow bark. Each has its time, its season, its secret. She learned them not from books, but from listening, to the forest, to the rivers, to those who came before her. On the wall hangs a strip of woven cloth, faded with age. It carries the marks of her mother's hands and her mother's mother before that. The knowledge is not written. It is remembered in motion. The way to grind, the way to boil, the patience to wait for the right moment, neither too soon nor too late. Healing here is not an act of command but of attention, a long apprenticeship to the rhythm of the world. The fire crackles, throwing sparks that dance like fleeting stars. Shadows move gently across her face, revealing lines carved not by age but by concentration. She works through silence as though it were music, every small sound, the crush of leaves, the hiss of boiling water, the shift of wood, part of a single living song. A knock comes at the door. She does not startle. She wipes her hands on her apron and opens it. A man stands there, wrapped in a fur cloak, his eyes hollow from sleeplessness. Behind him, the mist thickens, blurring the shape of his boat tied to the shore. He bows his head, says a name, and she understands. Another fever, another child. Without a word, she gathers what she needs, a jar of crushed berries, a cloth soaked in honey and resin. She places them into a pouch and ties it with cord. Then she looks at the man, not with pity, not with fear, but with calm acceptance. This is the rhythm of things. Sickness comes, healing follows, the balance must be kept. When he leaves, she stands for a moment at the doorway. The mist curls around her ankles, cool and soft. The sea breathes. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls from a small chapel, its sound fading into fog. She closes the door and returns to the fire. Inside, the warmth returns instantly, wrapping around her like a second skin. She kneels beside a pot, stirs the mixture slowly. The scent of pine resin fills the air, sharp, clean, alive. For a brief moment, she allows herself to rest, to listen to the wind pressing against the walls, It sounds like a whisper, a language only she can hear. She remembers stories told by her grandmother of spirits in the forest who watch over those who heal, of hands that glow when they touch the sick. She does not believe or disbelieve. She simply continues, as those before her did, shaping small miracles out of bark and patience. Evening comes early in the north. The light fades to silver, then to blue. The fire burns lower, but its warmth deepens, glowing in the hollows of the room. She sits beside it, sorting leaves, humming a song with no words. Outside, snow begins to fall. Slow, deliberate, like thought. The world is quiet now. Only the sea, the wind, and the heartbeat of the flame remain. In that quiet, her craft feels infinite. Not a trade, not a ritual, but a way of being. Each herb she touches holds the memory of summer, of sunlight, stored and waiting. Each breath she takes carries the knowledge of generations. She places another log on the fire, watches the sparks rise and vanish. Mist presses against the window. Somewhere beyond the fog, the sea continues its endless turning, its waves moving like sleep. And in this small room, in the soft rhythm of her hands, the balance of the world is kept, quietly, steadily, through mist and firelight. The herbs of endurance. Morning has passed, and the light outside the healer's window has turned thin, the kind of pale gold that belongs only to the far north. Snow lies in the hollows of the pines, and the air tastes of wood smoke and salt. Inside, the room glows softly, the fire steady in its cradle of stone. Her shelves are simple, rough planks nailed to the wall, bowed slightly under the weight of jars and bundles. Yet within their plainness lives a kind of order, a language only she understands. Each jar holds a fragment of the seasons. Angelica for warmth, juniper for cleansing, meadow sweet for fever, birch bark for strength, and dried nettle for the blood. The colours are muted, browns, greens, the dull gold of pollen dust. But when the firelight touches them, they seem to wake again, as if the summer, trapped in their veins, still remembers how to breathe. She runs her fingers across the glass, murmuring each name as if greeting an old friend. Every plant carries a season, every leaf a rhythm, every root a memory of earth. In winter, she grinds Angelica. Its scent is sharp and bright, like sunlight remembered. She learned long ago that warmth does not come only from fire, but from what the ground gives, the hidden heat of roots growing under frost. Angelica keeps that secret. It teaches the body to hold its own flame. For cleansing, there is juniper, small, dark berries that smell of smoke and rain. She crushes them slowly with the pestle, releasing their resinous song. The smoke they make when burned drives out sickness, or so the elders said. She does not argue. She has seen its power in the way breath steadies after the air is cleared. Meadow sweet lies in a cloth pouch beside her. Its fragrance is faintly sweet, almost shy. It cools the heat of fevers, eases the ache behind the eyes. She remembers gathering it by the river in late summer when bees wandered lazily and her hands smelled of wet grass. Even then she knew the plant was a teacher, patient, balanced, kind. Each herb is a piece of time held still. Together they are the memory of the land itself, the patience of soil, the endurance of roots, the slow wisdom of seasons turning. The healer moves between smoke and silence. Her work has no rush, no spectacle. She listens more than she acts. She knows when to boil, when to wait, when to rest. Some mornings she spends hours just sorting, touching, smelling, her senses guiding her more than thought. Healing, for her, is not a command over nature but a conversation with it. When she prepares a remedy, it is like building a small harmony. The pot sings quietly on the fire, the herbs swirl and darken, the air grows thick with scent. She tilts her head, listening. The water speaks in bubbles, telling her when it is ready, when it needs another moment to remember the shape of warmth. There is patience in this. Patience shaped by time. Her grandmother once told her, "The plants will not hurry for you. You must learn their pace." Now she repeats those words like a prayer. Outside, snow begins to fall again, fine as dust. The world beyond her walls is silent, except for the occasional crack of a branch. But inside, life moves gently. The crackle of the fire, the sound of dried stems snapping beneath her fingers, the rhythmic scrape of the pestle in the mortar. She pauses to sip water from a wooden cup, watching the light bend through the steam. The smoke curls upward, drawing invisible circles before fading into air. She thinks of the people who come to her. Fishermen, hunters, mothers with crying infants. They arrive tired, desperate, afraid. She gives them warmth, words, and the taste of green things. Sometimes they leave healed, sometimes they do not, but always they leave quieter. She has learned that healing is not always a cure. Sometimes it is only the steadying of breath, the easing of pain, the return of sleep. Sometimes it is nothing more than sitting beside the sick and letting them know they are seen. She carries this truth like a stone in her pocket. Heavy, grounding, real. Her hands bear small scars from years of work. A burn from an overturned pot. A cut from a thorn that slipped past her glove. These are her marks of practice, as old soldiers have theirs. Yet her touch remains gentle. She never forces, never fights the body's rhythm. Her strength lies in persistence, not power. As evening approaches, the room darkens to amber. The shelves glow softly in the firelight, as though the plants themselves are remembering the sunlight they once knew. She hums an old song, slow without words, and the sound seems to weave itself between the herbs and the smoke. The song is older than she is, older than any written prayer. It carries the memory of hands grinding, stirring, healing, a lineage unbroken by time. She does not think of it as her own. She is merely part of its echo. Patience, she reminds herself, is not waiting. It is attention. It is the art of being fully present while the world unfolds at its own speed. By the time the last of the light fades, her work for the day is done. She hangs the bundles of new herbs to dry, wipes the table clean, and sits by the fire. Her hands rest in her lap. Smoke drifts upward, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Outside, the wind changes direction, sweeping the snow sideways across the sea. The sound of it is low and endless, like breath drawn by something vast and invisible. She closes her eyes and listens. To the wind, the fire, the heartbeat of her own endurance. Healing, she knows, is not magic. It is patience shaped by time. The slow art of listening, of trusting that what grows will return, that what breaks may one day mend. And in this quiet house of wood and smoke, she practices that art again and again, until patience itself becomes a kind of prayer, soft, steady, eternal. The knowledge that remains. Snow gathers outside, slowly, endlessly, as if the sky has forgotten how to stop. The world is reduced to two colors, white and the faint orange glow leaking from a wooden window. The sea has disappeared behind the storm. Even the forest seems to have fallen asleep beneath its heavy blanket. Inside, there is warmth. The small house hums with the quiet rhythm of winter, the soft hiss of fire, the creak of wood, the faint rustle of drying herbs. The healer sits beside the hearth, her hands still, her breath calm. Before her, a child watches. The child is small, wrapped in wool, eyes wide and dark as the northern night. She does not speak. She does not need to. In this house, silence is the first language. She learns by watching. How the old woman stirs, how she measures, how she listens to the water when it begins to boil. Every gesture is a sentence, every pause a lesson. There are no books here. The shelves hold no scrolls or ink, only jars, roots, and the faint smell of earth. The knowledge lives elsewhere, in hands, in rhythm, in patience. What the old woman knows cannot be written. It must be lived, practiced, remembered through doing. The healer takes a bundle of dried herbs and lays them gently on the table. "Smell," she says at last, her voice low and steady. The child leans in. The scent of yarrow fills the air. Green, bitter, alive. "For wounds," the healer whispers. She takes another, meadow sweet, soft and sweet, smelling faintly of summer. "For fever." And then juniper, sharp as smoke. "For cleansing." The girl repeats the words under her breath, her lips barely moving. Not to memorize, but to feel the weight of them. How each name carries not just a cure, but a story, a season, a way of seeing the world. Outside, snow brushes against the window like fingertips. Inside, time moves differently, slower, circular. The hours stretch and fold like fabric. The child's learning is not a task to be completed, but a rhythm to be absorbed. The old woman shows her how to grind, not too hard, not too fast. "The roots will tell you when they're ready," she says. "How will I know?" the girl asks. "You'll hear it," the woman answers, smiling faintly. The girl listens to the scrape of stone on stone, to the breath between movements, to the whisper of dust rising from the mortar. She begins to understand that listening is part of the craft. The night deepens, the fire sighs and shifts. Shadows tremble across the walls and the air grows thick with the scent of herbs and smoke. The healer hums an old song and the child hums along, though she does not yet know the tune. The melody is older than both of them, passed through generations, changed by no one, forgotten by none. This is how knowledge survives here, not by being spoken, but by being shared in silence. It flows like water from one pair of hands to the next. It hides inside the gestures repeated so many times they become instinct. The way to tie a bundle, to test the heat of the pot, to know the difference between healing and harm. When the storm outside grows fierce, the child fetches wood for the fire. She struggles to carry it, her small arms shaking, but the healer does not intervene. "You must learn the weight," she says gently. "Not just of the wood, but of the work." The girl nods and places the logs carefully into the flames. Sparks rise and vanish. Later, they sit together in quiet. The healer pours tea made from pine needles and honey, and the scent of it fills the room. The girl takes a sip and winces at the bitterness, but drinks again anyway. "Patience," the healer says, smiling. "It begins bitter, but it ends sweet." Outside, the snow continues its long descent. The night feels endless, but the child is not afraid. She senses the rhythm of something larger, a continuity that stretches beyond memory, beyond names. The old woman's hands are wrinkled, veins like small rivers beneath her skin. When she works, the lines of her face soften, and for a moment she looks ageless, as if she has always been here and always will be. The girl studies her every move, how she sits close to the fire but never too close, how she speaks to the herbs as if they were listening, how she rests after each task, unhurried, deliberate. And though no one says it aloud, both of them understand what is happening, the passing of knowledge, invisible but real. Generations will continue this way. When the old healer is gone, the child will take her place. She will remember the scents, the sounds, the feel of the pestle in her hand. She will hum the same wordless song and speak to the plants in the same quiet tone, and one day another child will watch her by the fire, eyes wide, heart listening. That is how the wisdom endure. Through repetition, through breath, through care. No ink, no parchment, no altar. Only memory and time. Outside, the snow begins to ease, the wind softens, the sea finds its rhythm again. The stars emerge, faint, distant, patient. Inside, the two figures by the fire continue their work. The child crushes dried herbs while the old woman stirs the pot. They move in silence, but their silence is full of learning, of trust, of the unspoken promise that this knowledge will never vanish as long as someone remembers to listen. It is the quiet science of those who live close to the soil. Unwritten, enduring, as steady as the fire that burns through every winter, as certain as the spring that always returns. Jeanne, the silent flame of France. The fields of childhood. The valley lies folded between low green hills, wrapped in mist like a secret. At dawn, the light drifts gently over the barley fields, touching each stalk with gold. Dew gathers on the grass, trembling in silence. A river winds through the meadow, slow and deliberate, whispering to itself as it moves. The air smells of earth, of rain that fell in the night, of wood smoke rising from distant hearths. Here, in this quiet place, a young girl grows. Her world is small but whole, fields, sheep, and sky. Each morning, she wakes to the sound of the roosters calling from the neighboring farms, to the soft clatter of a pail, to her mother's steady footsteps near the hearth. She dresses in wool, rough and warm, her hands already familiar with the feel of work. The day begins not with noise but with movement, the rhythm of living things. She gathers firewood from the edge of the forest, the bundle scratching against her arms. She kneels to draw water from the well, her reflection rippling with every pull of the rope. Sometimes she pauses to watch the light change on the hills, the way shadows lengthen and shrink as clouds drift overhead. It is a quiet education, the kind that comes not from words, but from watching the seasons, the soil, the sky. Her days are simple: firewood, bread, silence. Each gesture carries purpose. The bread must rise, the fire must catch. There is comfort in repetition, in knowing that what was done yesterday will be done again tomorrow. And yet, somewhere beneath that stillness, something else stirs. A quiet awareness that the world is larger than this valley, that beyond these fields lies a vastness, both wondrous and frightening. In the evenings, the family gathers around the table. The room glows with the soft flame of a single candle. Her father speaks little, her mother's voice is low and firm, shaped by prayer and labor. Stories come from the wind, from passing travelers who speak of towns burned, kings dethroned, and battles that seem to move like weather. Storms made of men. The girl listens but does not ask. War feels distant, unreal, like thunder far away. When she goes to bed, the sounds of the valley return, the hoot of an owl, the bleat of a restless sheep, the whisper of barley swaying under the moon. She closes her eyes and dreams not of glory, but of light, a soft, wordless brightness that hovers just beyond thought. Seasons turn. Spring floods the fields with green. Summer hums with bees and the cry of swallows. In autumn, the harvest paints the hills gold. In winter, the snow smooths everything into stillness. Through it all, the girl grows taller, quieter, her gaze steady and searching. Her hands grow calloused from work, but her eyes remain bright, alert to every flicker of the world around her. There is something unhurried about her, a calm that does not belong entirely to childhood. She moves with purpose even when she does not know where that purpose leads. When others gossip or complain, she listens. When the church bell rings, she is the first to arrive, standing near the back, hands clasped, face lifted toward the faint echo of the chant. The priest speaks of faith, of saints and sacrifice, of voices that call the chosen to serve. The words settle somewhere inside her, deep and unseen, like seeds beneath winter soil. Sometimes she walks alone to the far edge of the fields, where the land opens into forest. There she sits on a fallen log, the wind tugging at her hair, and listens. Not for anything in particular, just for the sound of the world breathing. The rustle of leaves, the cry of a crow, the distant rush of water. All of it feels alive, filled with meaning she cannot name. She does not yet know it, but this is how faith begins. Not with thunder or miracles, but with attention, with stillness, with the willingness to listen to what others ignore. Her mother worries sometimes. "You spend too much time alone," she says. The girl smiles. "I'm not alone." And in truth, she is not. Even in solitude, she feels accompanied by wind, by earth, by something vast and kind that seems to move through all things. The years pass quietly, but the world beyond does not remain still. The war draws closer. Men arrive in the village carrying news and fear. Kings fall, villages burn, and the river of rumor widens until even this valley feels its pull. But in the midst of all this, the girl's calm does not break. She listens, nods, and returns to her work, gathering firewood, baking bread, tending to the sheep. And then, one morning, while the fields shimmer with frost, she feels it. Not a voice exactly, but a calling, low and certain, rising from within like the memory of something she has always known. It is as if the wind itself has turned to words, whispering her name. She freezes, her breath visible in the cold air. The moment passes, but the stillness it leaves behind is different, heavier, luminous. From that day on, she knows she will not stay here forever. The journey has already begun, though her feet have not yet moved. She begins to see the valley differently, as a place both precious and temporary. Every field, every stream, every stone becomes part of a farewell she does not yet understand. When she walks home that evening, The sky burns red behind the hills. Her mother calls her in for supper. Her father sharpens a tool by the fire. Everything is as it has always been, and yet nothing feels the same. Something vast is waiting just beyond the borders of her small world. She eats in silence, her thoughts drifting. The candle burns low. Outside, the wind presses against the door, carrying with it the sound of distant bells, faint, uncertain, as if coming from another world. Later, in the darkness of her small room, she lies awake, listening. The valley sleeps. The fields breathe. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the war, beyond the hills, a path is forming, invisible but real, leading her toward a destiny she cannot yet imagine. Her voice is calm, her steps steady. She does not yet know what courage will demand of her. She does not know the fire she will carry, the silence she will face. All she knows is that she must follow the call when it comes again. And so in the quiet heart of France, and among barley and sheep, beneath a sky that holds both peace and prophecy, a young girl begins the slow, invisible journey that will one day lead her far from home, toward light, toward trial, toward immortality. The City of Smoke. The road to Orléans is long, broken, and lined with ghosts. Fields that once shimmered with wheat now lie scorched and black. Abandoned carts sink into the mud beside the bodies of horses long gone cold. The air itself feels bruised, heavy with ash and the metallic scent of war. And yet, through this wounded land, a young woman walks. Her armor is plain, her sword unused. The soldiers who follow her are rough men, weary, suspicious, their faith battered by too many defeats. They have seen kings falter and cities fall. They have heard every promise before. But there is something in her, something that quiets even the most hardened hearts. She does not speak of glory or vengeance. She speaks of light, of duty, of the simple, unwavering truth that the city must be saved. As they march, villages emerge like ghosts from the fog, half burned, half abandoned. Old women watch from doorways, children clutch their skirts, and the men cross themselves as she passes. Some whisper her name, though few yet believe it. She is too young, too slight, too human to carry such a weight. But her presence bends the air around her. Even silence feels different when she walks through it. At dusk, they see Orléans. The city stands on the edge of the river, half shrouded in smoke. The siege has dragged on for months. The English hold the towers that ring its walls. Their banners hang like scars against the sky. Inside, the people wait, starving, afraid, caught between hope and surrender. No messenger from the court has reached them in weeks. No prayer has brought relief. And then she arrives, no trumpet greets her. No crowd cheers. She walks through the gates with her head bowed, her hands steady, her eyes fixed not on the walls, but on the sky above them. She wears no crown, no ornaments. Her armor is light, or cloth than metal, but the certainty around her burns brighter than any steel. Men who have forgotten courage begin to remember. They watch her pass and feel something they have not felt in years, a quiet belief that the impossible might still bend. They do not understand it, and neither does she fully. She only knows what must be done. The night before battle, the camp lies restless. Wind pushes the tents and the smell of smoke drifts through the dark. She kneels apart from the others beside a small fire that burns low. Her hands clasped, her lips moving silently. Not begging, not bargaining, simply speaking into the vastness, as she has done since the fields of her childhood. The soldiers watch from a distance. Some mock softly, others turn away. But a few listen. And in listening, they are changed. When dawn comes, the mist clings thick to the river. The walls of Orléans rise like a dream through smoke. She mounts her horse, her banner white against the grey, a piece of light pulled down from the sky. Her voice rings out, clear and unshaken. It is not a shout. It is calm, the kind of calm that steadies chaos, that makes others remember who they are. They move forward. The air splits with the roar of cannons, the crack of arrows. Men fall, mud splashes, and the ground trembles beneath the charge. Through it all she rides, not fast, not reckless, but inevitable, like a tide advancing on stone. Those near her say the smoke parted as she passed, that the arrows seemed to veer away, that her banner shone even when the sun was hidden. Whether miracle or myth, it does not matter. What matters is that they followed. By noon, the gates are retaken, the English retreat, their torches left smouldering on the banks. The bells of the cathedral begin to ring, not in triumph, but in disbelief. The siege, which had suffocated the city for so long, is broken. The people pour into the streets, thin, trembling, faces streaked with ash and tears. She dismounts quietly. The crowd surges toward her, voices rising in gratitude, in wonder, in desperate joy. She does not raise her arms, does not bask in it. Instead, she kneels in the mud and prays, her head bowed, her lips moving as though she were asking forgiveness for something only she understands. Around her, the city breathes again. The air smells of smoke and rain. A baker opens his shutters for the first time in months. Children run, laughing, though they do not know why. Old men lean on their canes and stare, unable to find words for what has happened. And in the midst of it all, she stands, still, quiet, her face pale with exhaustion. There are no songs, no triumphs. Only the relief of survival, deep, trembling, human. It is not glory that fills the streets, but gratitude, fragile and raw. The soldiers lower their weapons. Some weep. She moves among them, touching shoulders, murmuring blessings in a voice that seems both hers and not hers at all. Later, when the night returns, the city glows faintly with the last embers of the fires. The sky is streaked with red and smoke. She walks the ramparts alone, her banner folded, her armor streaked with mud. Below, the river runs black, carrying away the ashes of battle. She looks out over the water and breathes. Slow, deliberate, as though reminding herself she is still of this world. In that moment, there is no victory, only stillness. The wind presses against her, cool and steady. She closes her eyes, and for a heartbeat, she is back in the valley, hearing the bleat of sheep, the crackle of fire, her mother's voice calling from the doorway. Then the memory fades, and she opens her eyes to the wounded city she has saved. Faith does not make her fearless, it makes her steadfast. She feels the weight of what is coming, not triumph, but trial. Yet, she does not turn away. She never will. Orléans stands because she stood, not by sword or by power, but by presence, the unshakable calm that reminded others how to hope. And in the quiet that follows battle, when the flames dim and the bells fall silent, it is that calm that lingers, a silence deeper than prayer, a peace shaped by endurance. She walks through the city one last time before dawn. Smoke curls in the streets like ghosts refusing to leave. She touches the stone of the gate where she first entered, then turns toward the road, already knowing the path ahead will not lead her home. The siege is broken. The city breathes again. But for her, the journey is far from over. The still flame. The city she saved fades behind her, swallowed by distance and mist. The roads ahead twist through mud and ruin, and the banners that once lifted in her name now droop, heavy with the weight of politics and betrayal. Victory, she learns, is not a crown that lasts. It is a spark, bright, brief, and easily taken by the wind. They come for her at dawn. The same hour she once rose to pray, they take her in chains. No battle, no farewell, just the sound of boots on stone and the cold snap of iron closing around her wrists. She does not resist. She only bows her head as if listening for a voice no one else can hear. The cell is small, stone walls, a wooden stool, a narrow window cut into the world. Through it she can see a sliver of sky, sometimes blue, often grey. When the rain comes, it paints streaks across the wall, thin and trembling like the lines of a forgotten letter. They question her every day. Men in robes and armour with pens and suspicion, they speak of heresy, of witchcraft, of voices that must be false. They want confession, not truth. They want her to doubt the very light that brought her here, but she does not break. Her answers are few, her tone calm, her gaze unwavering. When they press her, she says only, "What I have said, I have said." When they mock her, she looks at them with quiet pity, not for their cruelty, but for their blindness. Her silence unnerves them more than any defense could. At night, the guards whisper about her. They say the candle in her cell burns longer than it should, that the flame bends toward her when she prays. They say she sings softly when she cannot sleep. Not songs of victory, but hymns of endurance, of faith held through fear. One young guard swears that when she closes her eyes, the whole room warms, as if the cold itself listens to her breath. Days blur. The candle shortens. The air grows thick with damp and smoke. She no longer counts time in hours, but in prayers, each one a thread holding her to the world. She has no book, no script, no comfort, but memory. Yet in that memory, she finds peace. The scent of barley fields, the sound of her mother's hands kneading bread, the laughter of wind through the valley grass. Those small things, so ordinary once, now burn brighter than the fire outside her window. Sometimes she speaks softly into the dark, not to herself, but to the silence beyond the walls. Her words are simple: gratitude, forgiveness, endurance. No plea for escape. No anger. She knows now that her freedom was never the point. Her calling was not to win, but to witness, to stand, to believe, to remain unbroken where others would kneel. When they bring her to the courtroom, the hall is vast and cold. Candles flicker like small, trembling hearts. Men sit in rows, their faces unreadable. Questions fall like stones. Did you hear voices? Were they divine? Did you act alone? Do you repent? She answers, as she always has. Clearly, simply, without fear. Yes, I heard them. They guided me. They were good. I did what I was commanded to do. Her voice does not tremble. Her eyes do not lower. And in that stillness, her judges grow restless, their power suddenly smaller than her quiet conviction. One of them shouts, "You claim to speak for heaven!" She replies, almost gently, "Do you not?" There is laughter, but it rings hollow. Outside, thunder murmurs against the sky. Inside, she stands unmoving, her figure outlined by the weak light filtering through stained glass. It is not defiance that fills her. It is clarity. The kind that comes when a soul understands that no verdict of men can alter the truth it carries. When they finally condemn her, she does not cry. Her breath catches only once when she thinks of the fields. The barley bending in wind, the valley bathed in morning light. But even that memory she releases like a bird set free. They lead her back to her cell. The candle is burning low. She sits before it, watching the wax melt into a slow, shimmering pool. Every flicker of the flame feels like a heartbeat. The world beyond the walls has become distant now, not gone, but fading, as if she already stands half in another realm. She prays one last time, not for deliverance, but for strength to endure what must come. Her words are soundless, but the silence that follows feels alive, vast, listening. Morning arrives pale and cold. The guards enter quietly. One of them cannot meet her eyes. She smiles at him, the kind of smile that forgives everything. Then she stands, straightens her simple dress and follows them out. The square is filled with people, though no one speaks. Smoke from the pyre curls upward, thick and grey. Birds scatter. A single bell tolls. She walks calmly, her steps even, her face serene. There is no grandeur in her movement, only grace, stripped of everything but truth. When they tie her hands, she looks upward, not pleading, but acknowledging. The wind stirs her hair, someone in the crowd begins to weep. And in that moment, before the fire, before the smoke, before the end, she closes her eyes and whispers something too soft to hear. Some say it was a prayer. Others say it was forgiveness. Perhaps it was both. The flames rise and the air shimmers with heat. The crowd turns away, unable to watch. But she does not scream. What burns is not faith, but flesh. Faith does not burn. It transforms. When the smoke clears, only ashes remain, grey, fine, scattered by the wind. The crowd disperses in silence. The soldiers leave, the square empties. But long after the embers die, a faint warmth lingers in the air, as if the fire refused to leave completely. Years later, pilgrims will come to that place. They will kneel on the same cobblestones and swear they can still feel the heat beneath their palms. They will speak her name softly, as though afraid to break the quiet. And at night, when the last candle is extinguished, the wind will move through the streets like breath, gentle steady, alive. Her story becomes light on the horizon, faint but never gone. It flickers in the memory of those who saw her, in the prayers of those who did not, and in the hearts of all who understand that silence can be as powerful as fire. The walls that confined her have long since crumbled. The candle that once burned too fast has become an eternal flame, not of smoke or sorrow, but of clarity, courage, and quiet endurance. And in the hush that follows every storm, if one listens closely, her voice can still be heard. Not as words, but as presence. A still flame burning beyond the reach of time. The bread of the Middle Ages. Before dawn. Before dawn, the town is a shape without sound, a collection of roofs folded in shadow, a breath of smoke rising from last night's embers. The streets lie empty except for the echo of water dripping from eaves. The world holds its breath, balanced on the edge between night and morning. In one small house at the corner of a square, a man stirs. The baker wakes in darkness. He sits for a moment on the edge of his bed, listening. To the wind sliding through the shutters, to the heartbeat of coals faintly alive in the oven beyond the wall. The air is cold enough to bite. He wraps a coarse cloak around his shoulders and moves toward the hearth. The town sleeps. Only the baker keeps time with the earth's oldest rhythm, hunger and bread. He builds the fire with practiced hands, stacking logs so the air can breathe between them. Sparks leap like fleeting stars before settling into a low, determined glow. He watches until the first crack of heat runs through the wood, until the sound becomes steady, a promise that warmth will return. From the storeroom he brings flour in a rough-spun sack. It spills like pale dust across the table. He digs a hollow in its center and pours in water from the well, cold and clear. The smell of it, stone, iron, and dawn, fills the room. He mixes by hand, his fingers disappearing into the grain. The dough pulls softly, resists, breathes. There is no haste. Each movement follows the one before it like steps in a prayer. Gather, press, fold, turn. The table creaks under the weight of his rhythm. Outside, the first color enters the sky. Not light, not yet, but the faintest silver edging the rooftops. He listens to the sound the dough makes. A whisper, a stretch, a sigh. It is the same sound his father once heard, and his father's father before him. This, too, is inheritance. Knowledge without words passed through muscle and memory. He knows by touch when the mixture is ready, when it no longer clings, when it yields without complaint. He covers it with cloth and lets it rest. Even bread, he thinks, must learn to be patient. The fire behind him strengthens. The brick oven glows from within, orange deepening to red. The scent of wood and ash fills the room, mingled with the faint sweetness of yeast awakening. He wipes his hands, dust rising like breath. In this hour, he is both alone and surrounded by ghosts of bakers past, by the sleeping town that depends on him, by the quiet pulse of life that stirs in every hidden corner. He shapes the loaves one by one, round, solid, human. The dough gives beneath his palms, alive with warmth. Each loaf feels different, some heavy, some light, as if they already know who they are meant to feed. He scores them with a small knife, the cuts forming simple marks, crosses, circles, initials of saints. Not decoration, but invocation. A hope that the bread will rise, that none will burn, that the day will begin in peace. When he slides the first tray into the oven, the heat greets him like an embrace. The door closes with a hollow thud, sealing the fire and the prayer together. He waits, listening. The world outside begins to change. A rooster calls. A cartwheel groans in the distance. The church bell rings once, low, hesitant, testing the morning. The baker wipes the flour from his arms and leans against the wall. For a moment, he does nothing. He breathes. The scent in the room is growing richer now. The first hint of crust, of life becoming nourishment. It is a smell that belongs to everyone and to no one, a scent older than empires. Soon the town will wake. Children will run with coins in hand. Women will bargain softly. Men will speak of weather and work. The square will fill with noise and movement. But for now, it is still night in his heart, a sacred hour that belongs only to the baker and the bread. He looks toward the window. A pale line of light has appeared on the horizon. He smiles quietly to no one. The first loaves are rising. The day begins. The morning loaves. Light finds its way through the small window, soft at first, then widening into gold. The baker lifts his head. The night's hush is dissolving. Within the oven, the loaves rise in silence. Round, breathing forms, their surfaces splitting gently where the blade once traced its mark. The air thickens with fragrance, warm grain, smoke, and sweetness. He opens the door and the room fills with glow. Steam rushes outward like a sigh. The bread is alive, as unjust baked, but born. He stands still for a moment, letting the heat touch his face. In the heart of each loaf, he hears the echo of his labor, of hours spent in darkness before anyone else had woken. He pulls them out one by one, lining them on the wooden table. White loaves, pale and fine, their crusts delicate as porcelain. Brown loaves, rough and solid, marked by ash and earth. The rich will choose the soft ones, light as cloud. The poor will take the darker kind, heavy but lasting, through the week. Different breads, the same hunger. Outside, the town awakens. Windows open, voices begin to rise, the sound of buckets at wells, the low talk of women starting fires, the bark of a distant dog. The baker hears it all through the half-open door. He knows every step on the cobblestones, every rhythm of the morning. Each life out there will taste a piece of what he has made. Children arrive first, eyes bright, clutching coins in their small fists. They press their noses to the counter, watching the steam curl from the loaves. He breaks one apart for them, a gesture older than language. The crust yields with a soft crack, warm and human, the sound of comfort itself. They laugh, crumbs clinging to their faces, and run back into the street. Then come the merchants, the mothers, the old men with walking sticks. The shop fills with quiet exchange, coins, words, nods of gratitude. No one stays long, but each leaves with a piece of the morning in their hands. Some bow their heads as if taking communion. Others smile without speaking, already thinking of the meal to come. The baker works steadily, refilling baskets, turning loaves, brushing away stray flour. He speaks little. His gestures are enough. Every motion is an act of faith. The belief that nourishment can hold the world together, at least for another day. Outside, light spills across the square, catching on windows, on water barrels, on the hair of children chasing one another through the dust. A bell rings from the church tower, scattering pigeons into the air. The smell of bread follows them upward, drifting over rooftops, winding through alleys, touching every home. By mid-morning, the rush is over. Only a few loaves remain on the table, cooling slowly, The baker wipes his hands and looks around the quiet room. Flour clings to his sleeves, to his beard, to the dark lines of the table. Traces of labor that will vanish with the sweep of a cloth. He feels the ache in his shoulders, the steady rhythm of fatigue, and also a kind of peace. He breaks a small loaf for himself and sits by the window. The crust cracks softly beneath his fingers. He eats without hurry, tasting smoke, salt, and sunlight. Each bite reminds him that simplicity is not emptiness, but grace. Beyond the walls, life has begun again. Carts rolling, voices calling, the river glinting like molten glass. The day will bring work, quarrels, laughter, and loss, as it always does. But for this moment, everything is held together by warmth and scent, by the humble perfection of bread shared among the living. And when he closes his eyes, he hears it once more. That small human sound as the crust breaks, the heartbeat of morning soft and eternal. The rhythm of survival. Evening returns, soft and blue. The heat of the day withdraws, leaving the town hushed beneath a thin veil of smoke. The baker wipes the table clean, gathers his tools, and covers the flour as one might tuck in a sleeping child. The oven sighs as it cools, the last glow fading behind its iron mouth. He sits for a moment beside it, palms open on his knees, feeling the warmth ebb slowly from the bricks. Outside, the square is empty. The shutters close one by one, and the smell of supper drifts through the alleys. Stew, wine, the faint echo of laughter. A lantern swings from a nail above his door, casting a trembling circle of light on the cobblestones. He listens to the rhythm of footsteps fading, to the murmur of voices swallowed by distance. The world, like the bread, has risen and rested once more. He washes his hands in a wooden bowl. The water turns cloudy with flour and ash. His fingers, rough from kneading, move carefully, as if honoring something sacred. Tomorrow he will begin again. The same fire, the same dough, the same steady patience that has carried his craft across centuries. He feels no boredom in the repetition, only belonging. In the constancy of his work, he hears the heartbeat of all who came before him. He looks around the small room, the shelves, the sacks, the cooling loaves lined like quiet prayers. Everything here is ordinary, and that is its holiness. Bread does not boast, it sustains. Its miracle lies in its simplicity. Or grain, water, salt, and hands. It asks nothing, yet it feeds everyone. Outside, the last light leaves the sky. A thin crescent of moon rises above the rooftops, pale as unbaked dough. He leans back, listening to the faint crackle of the cooling oven. The sound is almost like breathing, slow, human, alive. It reminds him that labor itself is a kind of faith, a belief that effort, repeated daily, can hold the world together. Tomorrow, the same fire will burn. The same bread will rise, children will laugh in the streets, soldiers will march to war, kings will rise and crumble, yet still, somewhere, a baker will wake before dawn to keep hunger at bay. The ritual endures unchanged by centuries. Hands change. The gesture remains. Through time, the pattern continues. The smoke of the baker's oven joins the mist of the northern seas, the incense of Roman temples, the faint candlelight of a prison cell. all drift together, woven into a single breath, the breath of humanity itself. The quiet acts that built the world, repeated endlessly, unseen, uncelebrated. History does not live in monuments alone. It lives here, in the pulse of work, in the rhythm of survival, in the hands that healed, that baked, that prayed, that carried. Their names may be gone, their faces dust, but their motions remain, echoing through every life that follows. The baker rises, blows out the lamp, and opens the door. Night greets him with cool air and silence. He looks once toward the stars, as if counting them the way he counts his loaves. Then he steps inside and the door closes softly behind him. The city fades, the smoke of ovens, the mist of the north, the silence of a cell, all become one. History breathes quietly, steady as sleep. Let the night fall. Let it gather these stories of work, of faith, of endurance, and carry them into your dreams. For the quiet hands of history never stop moving. They turn the wheel, they shape the bread, they keep the fire alive, and through them the world continues to rise.